I am 65 years old, and I thought I had seen everything in this life. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what my own son would do to me in front of 50 people. I gave him a $300,000 car for his 40th birthday. An imported SUV, black, as shiny as a mirror. He raised his champagne flute, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "A toast to the idiotic mother who tries to buy love like you buy bread at the bakery." The guests erupted in laughter. I remained standing with the keys still in my hand. I smiled, stood up, walked to the door, and left. But what I did next, Julian will remember until the last day of his miserable life. Let me tell you how I got to that moment. Because I was not naive, I was not a fool, I was a mother, and that was my biggest mistake. My name is Clara. I was widowed at 30 years old with a 3-month-old baby in my arms. My husband died in a car accident 2 weeks after Julian was born. There was no insurance. There was no inheritance. Only debt. And a child to feed. So I sewed. I sewed at night on my old machine while Julian slept. I sewed wedding dresses, school uniforms, party outfits. My fingers would bleed sometimes. But it did not matter, because my son would eat. My son would study. My son would have everything I never had. And I succeeded. At 40 years old, I started my own apparel company. Small at first, then it grew. I hired 10 women, then 20. By the time I was 50, my company was producing clothes for 3 major retail chains. I did not become a millionaire, but we never went without. Julian went to a private school, then to a university. He graduated from law school with honors. I was in the front row on his graduation day, crying like an idiot, in my beige dress that I had sewn the night before because I did not have time to buy a new one. I thought it would all be worth it. I thought my sacrifice meant something to him. But then he met Victoria. She came from old money. From one of those families with important last names and properties in 3 countries. The first time he introduced me to her parents, Victoria's father asked me what I did for a living. "I own a garment company," I said with pride. He barely smiled. "Ah, what a noble trade," he said, as if he were talking about cleaning toilets. Victoria looked me up and down. My clothes were good, but they did not have a designer label. My shoes were comfortable, not elegant. My purse was practical, not a brand name. I was living proof that Julian came from nothing, and to her, that was unforgivable. After the wedding, my son began to change. He no longer visited me on Sundays. He canceled lunches. He always had an excuse: work, a trip, a social engagement. When I saw him at family gatherings, he treated me with a cold politeness that hurt more than any insult. He would introduce me as my mother, and then quickly change the subject. As if my existence were an inconvenient formality, Victoria did not even pretend. She would greet me with 2 kisses in the air, and then ignore me completely. I tried to get closer. I brought food that Julian loved as a child, gifts for birthdays, calls to see how he was. Silence, always silence. But I kept trying, because he was my son, my only son. The boy I rocked all night when he had a fever. The teenager I supported when he failed math. The young man I hugged when his first love left him. I thought that somewhere, inside that man in the expensive suit and cold manners, my Julian still existed. The little boy who told me, "I love you, Mom," before going to sleep. How stupid I was. When I turned 60, I sold the company. They gave me a good price, almost $2 million. I could have traveled, bought a house on the coast, enjoyed my old age. But no, I saved that money thinking of Julian, of his future, of my grandchildren, if I ever had any. I thought, when I am gone, he will understand everything I did for him. How pathetic that sounds now. Last month, Victoria called me. It was the first time in 2 years I had received a call from that house. "Clara, we're throwing a surprise party for Julian. He's turning 40. It would be lovely if you came." Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. I should have been suspicious, but I was so hungry for attention, so desperate to be included, that I said yes immediately. "Can I bring anything?" I asked. "Don't you worry," she said. "Just your presence is enough." Liar. I did not want to arrive empty-handed. Julian had always loved cars. As a child, he collected scale models. As a teenager, he memorized brands and specifications. His dream was to own an imported SUV. I remember because he told me 1,000 times. So I thought, this is my chance. I will give him something he truly wants, something that will show him how much I love him. I went to the dealership. I chose the most beautiful SUV I saw. Black, powerful, perfect. $300,000, almost half of my savings. But it was for my son. It was worth every penny. The day of the party, I got ready carefully. I wore a cream-colored dress I had bought, especially for the occasion. I put on makeup. I did my hair. I wanted to look good. I wanted Julian to be proud of his mother for once. I arrived at the house with the keys in a velvet case. My heart was beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The party was in the backyard. Lights hanging from the trees. Waiters with trays. Elegant guests. Soft music. Everything perfect. Everything expensive. I did not fit in there, and I knew it. But I was the mother of the birthday boy. I had a right to be there. Victoria saw me arrive and smiled. That smile should have warned me. But I was excited. "Clara, so good of you to come," she said loudly. Everyone turned. "Julian, look who's here." My son approached. He gave me a kiss on the cheek. Cold, quick, the way you would kiss a stranger. "Hi, Mom," he said. "Happy birthday, my love," I replied. My voice trembled with emotion. I took out the case. "I have something for you." He looked at the case. Then he looked at me. Something flashed in his eyes. It was not gratitude. It was contempt. He opened the case. The keys glittered under the garden lights. "It's an SUV," I said. "The one you always wanted." "It's outside." The guests murmured, impressed. Julian took the keys. He held them up, and then he picked up his champagne flute. "Attention, everyone," he said. His voice was firm. "I'd like to make a toast." Everyone fell silent. They raised their glasses. I smiled. I thought he was going to thank me. I thought I would finally have a moment of recognition, of affection. "A toast," Julian repeated, looking straight at me, "to the idiotic mother who tries to buy love like you buy bread at the bakery." Silence. 2 seconds of absolute silence. Then the laughter. First one, then another, then all at once. 50 people laughing. Victoria covered her mouth, but her eyes shone with satisfaction. Julian's friends clinked their glasses. "It's true," someone shouted. "You can't buy love." More laughter. More mockery. I just stood there, still smiling, because my face did not know how to react. Something inside me broke in that instant. It was not my heart. It was something deeper, more ancient. It was the last shred of hope that my son loved me. My hands started to shake. My eyes filled with tears, but I would not let them fall. I would not give them that satisfaction. I lifted my chin. I clutched my purse. I walked toward the exit. No one stopped me. No one said a word. I only heard more laughter behind me. I got to my car. I closed the door. I started the engine, and only then, in the darkness of that empty street, did I cry like I had not cried in 35 years. I cried for the little boy who no longer existed. I cried for all the years I wasted trying to earn a love that was never real. And as I drove back to my empty house, I made a decision that would change everything. But that, my dear Julian, you would find out very soon. I got home at 11 o'clock at night. The lights were off. The house smelled of silence. I took off my shoes at the entrance. I sat on the sofa without turning on the lights. Just me and the darkness. My hands were still trembling. My chest ached as if someone had hit me with a hammer. I closed my eyes and saw the scene over and over again. The raised glass, the laughter, the satisfaction in Victoria's eyes. And Julian, my son, my only son, destroying me in front of strangers as if I were a cheap joke. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands shook so much I spilled half of it. I sat at the kitchen table. The same table where Julian had done his homework for years. The same one where we ate breakfast together before he went to school. I ran my fingers over the worn wood. there was a small burn mark in the corner. From when he was 8 years old and accidentally set a hot pan on it, I did not get angry. I just hugged him and told him that accidents happen, that the important thing was that he was okay. How many times had I protected him? How many times had I put his happiness before my own? When he was 15 and failed a major exam, I went to speak with the teacher. I begged him to give Julian another chance. The teacher agreed, but on one condition. I had to donate uniforms for the low-income children at the school. I sewed 30 uniforms in 2 weeks. 30, for free. My fingers bled from the effort. But Julian passed. And that was all that mattered. When he turned 18 and wanted to go to the most expensive private law school in the city, I sold my car. I took a second job. I sewed during the day in my workshop and did alterations at people's homes at night. I slept 4 hours a day. I lost so much weight my friends thought I was sick. But I paid for every semester, every book, every supply he needed. And when he graduated with honors, he gave me a quick hug and went off to celebrate with his classmates. I was not invited to that celebration. "It's a young people thing, Mom," he told me. "You understand, right?" Of course I understood. I always understood. Now, sitting in that empty kitchen, I wondered when it all began. When my son had stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as an embarrassment. Maybe it was when he went to college and met classmates who came from wealthy families. Families with important last names and houses in the best neighborhoods. He never brought anyone to our house. He always met at other people's homes. "It's more comfortable, Mom," he would say. "They have more space." Our house had 3 bedrooms, a small yard, old but clean furniture. It was not a palace, but it was our home, or at least I thought it was. Then he met Victoria. She came into my life like an elegant storm. Everything about her screamed money. Her clothes, her perfume, the way she walked. The first time she came to our house, she barely sat down. She looked at the sofa as if it might give her a disease. "How cozy," she said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Julian was nervous. I saw it in the way he fidgeted with his hands, in how he avoided my gaze. I cooked a meal, my best recipe, the roast chicken he had loved as a child. Victoria ate 3 bites. "It's interesting," she said. "I don't usually eat carbs at night." Julian did not eat much either. He just pushed the food around on his plate. That night I understood I had lost my son. That Victoria was not just his girlfriend. She was his escape route to a world where I had no place. The wedding was 6 months later. A large ceremony in a private garden. 200 guests. I knew almost no one. I sat in the second row because the first was for Victoria's family. During the ceremony, I looked at my son. He looked at his bride as if she were a prize he had won. He did not look at me once. At the reception, they sat me at a table in the back, with distant cousins I had not seen in years. Julian came by to say hello for 5 minutes. "Thanks for coming, Mom," he said, and he left. Victoria did not even come over. That night I cried in my hotel room. I cried because I had paid for half of that wedding. $15,000. 2 years of savings. But my name was not mentioned in any of the speeches. No one thanked me. No one mentioned that without me, Julian would not be where he was. I was invisible, and the worst part is, I was starting to get used to it. After the wedding, the visits became rarer. Julian would call once a month. 5-minute conversations. "How are you, Mom?" "Fine, honey." "And you?" "Busy with work." "When are you coming over for a meal?" "I'll let you know." He never let me know. I stopped asking. I started waiting. Every Sunday, I would cook just in case he decided to visit. Most Sundays, I ate alone. I would put the leftovers in the refrigerator. I would throw them out on Wednesday when they started to go bad. And the next Sunday, I would cook again. Because you never knew. Maybe this Sunday he would come. I turned 60, and he did not come. He sent flowers with a card. "Happy birthday, Mom. We love you. We love you." Plural. As if Victoria had anything to do with that message. The flowers were beautiful. Peach-colored roses. I put them in a vase. I looked at them for a week until they wilted. Then I threw them out and cried, because my son had not come. He had not even called. It was Grace who visited me that day. my lifelong friend. We met when we were 20. She studied psychology, and I was just starting with my sewing. We grew apart when she moved to another city for work, but she came back when she retired. That afternoon of my birthday, she knocked on my door with a cake. "You're not turning 60 alone," she said. We ate cake. We drank coffee. We talked about everything except Julian. But she knew. She always knew. "Clara," she said before she left, "one day you're going to understand that you can't force anyone to love you, not even your own son." Her words hurt more than any of Julian's silences. I decided then that I would sell the company. I was tired. My body ached. My hands had arthritis. Sewing had become difficult. And what was the point of working anymore? For whom? I sold everything. The machines, the building, the brand. They gave me $1,800,000. A fortune. I could live comfortably for the rest of my days. I could travel. Buy that house on the coast I always wanted. Rest. But I did not. I put that money in the bank. For Julian. For when he needed it. For when I was no longer around and he might, just might, remember that he had a mother who loved him more than anything in the world. How foolish that version of me sounds now. The months passed. Julian still did not visit. I was still waiting. Until that call from Victoria came. "We're throwing a surprise party for Julian." For the first time in years, I felt included. I felt important, as if my presence finally mattered. I thought about what to get him. What could I give him that would show him how much I loved him? And I remembered that SUV he always wanted, that car he used to see in magazines as a teenager. "One day I'll have one of those," he would say, pointing at the pictures. I thought, this is the moment. I'll give him his dream. I spent $300,000, almost half of my savings. But what did it matter? It was for him, for my son. For the little boy who once hugged me and told me I was the best mom in the world. That little boy still existed somewhere. He had to. I just needed to find him. The car would be the bridge, the gesture that would finally break down that wall of ice between us. But no, it was not a bridge. It was my public humiliation, my final defeat, the moment my son spat in my face in front of 50 people, and they all applauded. Now I was in my kitchen. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I had not slept. I had not eaten. I had just been sitting in the dark, remembering every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every dollar I spent on him, every tear I hid so he would not feel bad. And in the end, none of it had mattered. Nothing. Because to Julian, I was not his mother. I was his embarrassment, his poor past, the proof that he came from the bottom. And that was unforgivable in the world he now belonged to. I stood up. I went to my room. I opened the drawer where I kept old photos. Photos of Julian as a baby, Julian as a child, Julian as a teenager. In all of them, I was by his side, smiling, hugging him, looking at him with that infinite love only a mother can have. I picked up one photo. He was 5 years old. We were at the park. I had bought him an ice cream, and he was hugging me happily. "You're the best mom in the world," he had said that day. I remembered it perfectly. I looked at that photo for a long time. Then I put it away, because that little boy no longer existed, and I needed to accept that. I sat on the bed. I took a deep breath. And for the first time in 35 years, I felt something different. Not pain, not sadness, rage. Pure, clear rage. Against Julian. Against Victoria. Against myself for having been so stupid. For having allowed them to treat me like this. For having begged for love for years. I picked up my phone. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. I looked up my lawyer's number. I wrote him a message. "Edward, I need to see you first thing tomorrow. It's urgent." I turned off the phone. I lay down. And for the first time in months, I slept soundly. Because I had made a decision. A decision that would change everything. Julian wanted to humiliate me. He wanted to laugh at me. Perfect. But that laugh would cost him more dearly than he could ever imagine. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning. No alarm had gone off. My body simply knew it was time to get up. I showered. I dressed in black pants and an ivory blouse. I pulled my hair back. I put on my makeup carefully. I needed to look strong. I needed to feel strong. Because what I was about to do required absolute clarity. I made coffee. I sat at the table, the same place where I had cried all night. But now there were no tears. Only determination, cold as ice. At 8 o'clock sharp, my phone rang. It was Edward, my lawyer. "Clara, I got your message. Are you okay? You sound urgent." His voice held genuine concern. Edward had helped me with the sale of the company. He was a serious, professional, trustworthy man. "I need to see you today," I said. "It's important." There was a pause. "I can see you at 10. Does that work?" "Perfect," I replied. I hung up. I grabbed my purse. I left the house. I drove to his office. The traffic was heavy, but I did not mind. I had time. I had all the clarity in the world. I arrived 15 minutes early. I sat in the waiting room. There were magazines on the table, but I did not touch them. I just looked out the window. The sky was gray. It looked like it was going to rain. How appropriate, I thought. Edward came out to greet me personally. "Come in, Clara." He led me to his office. He closed the door. I sat across from his desk. He took his seat and looked at me attentively. "What do you need?" I took a deep breath. "I want to change my will." Edward nodded. "Of course. What changes do you want to make?" "I want to disinherit my son." Silence. Edward stared at me. "Clara, that's a very serious decision. Are you sure?" "Completely sure," I answered without blinking. "I want Julian to receive absolutely nothing from my estate. Nothing." Edward leaned back in his chair. "May I ask what happened?" I told him everything. The party, the gift, the humiliation, the laughter, everything. As I spoke, my voice did not tremble once. Edward listened in silence. When I finished, he sighed. "I'm so sorry, Clara. No one deserves that, especially not from their own child." "Then do it," I said. "Revoke everything. Let him inherit nothing." Edward picked up a pen. "All right. Who do you want to designate as your beneficiary?" I had not thought about it until that moment. I looked out the window. I thought about all those years of work, all those nights sewing, all that money I had saved for someone who did not value me. "I want to donate 40% to the Hope Foundation." Edward looked up. "The Foundation for Orphaned Children." "Yes," I said, "children who don't have a mother. Maybe they will appreciate what a mother would do for them. Because my son clearly doesn't." Edward wrote it down. "And the rest?" "I want to use part of it to buy myself a house. A house on the coast. Small, quiet, far from here." Edward kept writing. "How much are you thinking?" $200,000. "I'll look for something simple." He nodded. "And the rest of the estate?" "Set up a trust for me. For my expenses. To live quietly for the rest of my life. And when I die, whatever is left goes to the foundation as well." Edward finished writing. He looked at me. "Clara, this means Julian is completely cut out. Legally, he won't be able to claim a thing." "That's exactly what I want," I said. "I need you to draft everything today, and I want to sign it tomorrow." Edward frowned. "So quickly?" "Yes. Before he tries to contact me, before he comes with excuses or fake apologies. I need to do it now, while I have the strength." Edward studied my face. He was looking for doubt, I suppose. Regret. He found none. "All right," he said finally. "I'll draft everything today. You can come in first thing tomorrow to sign." I stood up. I shook his hand. "Thank you, Edward." He squeezed my hand warmly. "Clara, I know this hurts, but I think you're doing the right thing. No one has the right to treat you like that. Not even your son." I nodded. I walked out of his office with my head held high. I got in my car. I started it, and for the first time in days, I felt something like relief. It was not happiness, it was not peace, but it was the first step toward my freedom. I drove aimlessly for a while. I did not want to go home yet. The house felt too empty, too full of memories of a son who no longer existed. I drove down Main Street. I saw shops, restaurants, people walking, normal life, people with their normal problems. I envied that normality. I stopped in front of a coffee shop. I went in. I ordered a coffee and a slice of chocolate cake. I sat by the window. I ate slowly. The cake was good, sweet, comforting. It had been years since I had bought myself cake. I was always on a diet or saving money or thinking about other things. But today, I deserved it. A woman sat at the table next to me. She was about my age, maybe a little older. She was alone, too, reading a book. She looked calm, at peace. I wondered if she had children, if her children called her, if they visited her, or if she was alone like me, too. I wanted to ask her. I wanted to talk to someone, but I did not. I finished my coffee. I paid. I left. I walked down the street. There was a bookstore. I went in. It smelled like new paper. I liked that smell. I walked through the aisles. I picked up a book at random. It was about women who had changed their lives after 60. I smiled ironically. How timely. I bought the book. I also bought a mystery novel, something to distract my mind. I left the bookstore feeling strangely good, as if I were doing things for myself for the first time in decades. I got home at noon. There were 3 missed calls, all from Julian. There were no voicemails, just calls. I deleted the notifications. I had nothing to say to him. Not now. Maybe never. I made lunch. Salad and grilled chicken. I ate in the yard. It was a nice day despite the clouds. The birds were singing. There was a gentle breeze. I realized it had been years since I had eaten in the yard. I always ate inside in front of the television or in the kitchen reading the newspaper. But out here it was different. It was quiet, peaceful. After eating, I lay down in the hammock. I closed my eyes. I listened to the sounds of the neighborhood. Dogs barking, children playing, cars passing. Life, simple and ordinary. I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I had slept for 3 hours. I could not remember the last time I had taken a nap. I felt rested, relaxed. I went inside the house. I checked my phone. 5 more calls from Julian. A text message. Mom, I need to talk to you. It's important. I deleted the message. I called a real estate agency. Good afternoon. I'd like to see some houses on the coast. Something small, quiet. The woman on the other end sounded enthusiastic. Of course, ma'am. When would you like to see some properties? As soon as possible, I said. Tomorrow afternoon. Perfect. I have 3 options that might interest you. Does 3 o'clock in the afternoon work for you? Excellent, I replied. I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up. I smiled. I was doing it. I was taking control of my life. That night, I cooked my favorite dinner. Pasta with homemade tomato sauce. Something I had not made in years because Julian did not like it. It's too simple, Mom, he would say. But I loved it. I ate slowly, savoring every bite. I put on music. Old songs I liked when I was young. Ballads. Love songs. Music that made me feel alive. I washed the dishes. I straightened the kitchen. I changed into comfortable clothes. I sat on the sofa with the book I had bought. I read for 2 hours. The story was good. It distracted me completely. At 10 o'clock at night, the doorbell rang. I tensed up. I looked through the window. It was Julian. He was standing on my doorstep, alone, without Victoria. He rang the bell again. Mom, I know you're in there. Please open up. His voice sounded different, less arrogant, almost pleading. I did not move. I stayed on the sofa in silence. Mom, I need to talk to you. About what happened. He kept ringing. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Finally, he left. I remained sitting in the dark. My heart was beating fast. But not from fear. From power. For the first time in my life, I was in control. I decided who entered my space, who deserved my attention. And Julian did not deserve it. Not after what he did. I went to sleep feeling strangely calm. Tomorrow I would sign the papers. Tomorrow I would see houses on the coast. Tomorrow my new life would officially begin. And Julian would have to learn to live with the consequences of his actions. Because I had already learned to live without him. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I had not felt in years. The sun streamed through my bedroom window. Outside, the birds were singing. I stretched in bed. For the first time in a long time, I did not feel that weight on my chest, that constant anxiety of wondering if Julian would call. If he would visit. If he would finally show me even a little affection. All of that was gone, and in its place was something new, something it took me a moment to identify. It was freedom. I got up. I showered. I dressed in gray pants and a lavender-colored blouse. I put on a little makeup. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was 65 years old. She had wrinkles around her eyes. Gray hairs I no longer bothered to dye. But her eyes were firm, determined. This woman was never going to beg for love again. I had a quiet breakfast. Coffee with toast. Strawberry jam. Simple and perfect. At 9 o'clock sharp, I left for Edward's office. The traffic was light. I arrived 10 minutes early. Edward was waiting for me with the documents ready. "Good morning, Clara." I sat down. He placed the papers in front of me. "Here is everything." I reviewed every clause. "Julian is completely excluded from your will. 40% of your estate goes to the Hope Foundation. The rest is in a trust for you. Whatever is left after your death also goes to the foundation." I read each page carefully. Everything was perfect. "Are you absolutely sure?" Edward looked at me seriously. "Once you sign, this is final." I picked up the pen. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I signed. Every sheet, every initial, every signature was a release. It was closing a door that had been open for 35 years. A door through which only pain had entered. Edward signed as well. He called his secretary. She came in and signed as a witness. "Done," Edward said. "It's official." I stood up. I put my copy of the documents in my purse. "Thank you, Edward, for everything." He came around the desk and gave me a fatherly hug. "Take care of yourself, Clara. And remember, this doesn't make you a bad mother. This makes you a woman who respects herself." His words touched me deeply. I nodded, unable to speak. I walked out of his office with my head held high. I got into my car. I put my hands on the steering wheel. I took a deep breath. It was done. There was no going back. I drove to a small restaurant I liked. I ordered lunch. Vegetable soup and grilled fish. I ate slowly while reading the news on my phone. There were 6 missed calls from Julian. 3 messages. I did not open them. I paid my bill. At 2:30, I headed for the coast. The real estate agent had given me the address of the first house. I drove for an hour. The coastal highway was beautiful. The sea on one side, mountains on the other. I rolled down the window. The air smelled of salt, of freedom. I arrived in the coastal town at 3 o'clock sharp. It was small, quiet, colorful houses, narrow streets, people walking without a hurry. I liked it immediately. The agent was waiting for me at the edge of town. She was a woman in her 40s. A kind smile. "Clara?" "Yes, that's me." We shook hands. "I'm Sarah. I have 3 properties to show you. Ready?" "Completely ready," I replied. The first house was too close to the highway. Noisy. I dismissed it immediately. The second was nice, but too big. 2 floors, 4 bedrooms, too much space for me alone, too much upkeep. "And the third?" I asked. Sarah smiled. "That one's my favorite. Follow me." We drove for 3 more minutes. We stopped in front of a small cream-colored house. It had a front garden with wildflowers, a wooden porch, large windows. I could hear the sea in the distance. "It's perfect," I said before even going inside. Sarah laughed. "Wait until you see the inside." She opened the door. We went in. The living room was small but bright. Hardwood floors, white walls, a stone fireplace. The kitchen was compact but functional. 2 bedrooms, 1 full bathroom. Everything was clean, simple, cozy. I walked to the back porch, and there it was, the sea, 50 yards away. The sound of the waves was clear and constant. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. "How much?" I asked. Sarah consulted her folder. $180,000. It was perfect. Within my budget. "I'll take it," I said without a second thought. Sarah blinked in surprise. "Don't you want to think about it? See other options?" "No," I replied firmly. "This is it. I want to buy it." Sarah smiled broadly. "Then let's start the paperwork. You can make a down payment this week." "I can give you half tomorrow," I said. "Perfect. Give me 2 days to get everything ready. Does that sound good?" "It sounds excellent." We returned to the town. We sat in a coffee shop. Sarah took out documents. She explained the process. I nodded but was barely listening. I was looking out the window toward the sea. I was buying a house for me. Not to impress anyone. Not so Julian would have a place to stay when he visited. Just for me. To rest. To live. To be happy. I signed the preliminary documents. Sarah gave me her card. "I'll call you in 2 days with everything ready." We said goodbye. I walked through the town before heading back. There was a bakery that smelled of freshly baked bread. I went in. I bought pastries and cookies. There was a small bookstore. I bought 2 more books. There was a home decor shop. I bought scented candles and a green ceramic vase. I carried my bags to the car feeling strangely excited, like a child with new toys. I could not remember the last time I had bought things just because I liked them. Without thinking if Julian would approve, without worrying about saving for him, I drove back to the city as evening fell. The sky was painted orange and pink. Beautiful. I arrived home at 7 o'clock in the evening. There was a car parked in front of my house. I recognized the SUV, the $300,000 SUV. Julian was sitting on my front steps. He stood up when he saw me arrive. "Mom, finally." His voice was urgent, almost desperate. I got out of the car with my bags. I ignored him completely. I walked toward the door. "Mom, wait. I need to talk to you." I kept walking. I took out my keys. "Mom, please, just 5 minutes." I opened the door. I stepped inside. He put his foot in the door before I could close it. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What I said was horrible. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking." I turned around. I looked him directly in the eyes. "Get your foot out of my door." My voice was pure ice. He blinked, surprised. "Mom, Get your foot out. Now." Julian slowly removed his foot. "Can we talk like adults? Just give me a chance to explain." I held the door partially open. "There's nothing to explain. You said exactly what you thought. In front of 50 people. You said it with clarity, with intention. The only thing I regret is taking so long to understand who you really are." His eyes widened. "I'm not that person. I was angry. Victoria had told me." "I'm not interested in what Victoria told you," I interrupted. "You're a 40-year-old man, responsible for your words, responsible for your actions." "Mom, I was an idiot. I accept that. But I'm your son. Your only son." I stared at him. I had a son. His name was Julian. That boy loved me. He respected me. He valued me. That boy died many years ago. The man standing in front of me is a stranger who uses my blood as an excuse to mistreat me. Julian took a step back as if I had slapped him. "Don't say that. I'm still me. I'm still your son." "No," I said, my voice firm. "My son would not have humiliated me like that. My son would not have used me as a joke to entertain his friends. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake. Let me make it up to you." I laughed without humor. "Make it up? How, Julian? With flowers? With empty apologies? Waiting for me to forget so you can treat me like trash again? It won't happen again. I swear." I studied him in silence. I saw a desperate man. But not for love, for something else, for fear, for need. "Why did you really come here?" I asked. "Because you're my mother and I love you," he answered quickly. Too quickly, Lies, I said. You came because someone told you something. Because you need something. Julian looked down. There it was. The truth. I need you to sign some papers. For a business deal. I need to use your house as collateral. There it was. That was why he had come. Why the calls? Why the urgency? It was not regret. It was convenience. I felt something inside me shut down definitively, like a heavy, immovable steel door. Get out of my house, I said. Mom, get out, now, and don't come back. But if you're not gone in 10 seconds, I'm calling the police. Julian looked at me in disbelief. He expected me to give in, to forgive him like I always did. But this time, there was no forgiveness. There were no tears. There was no weakness. Only a 65-year-old woman who had finally learned to say no. He finally turned around. He walked toward his car. He stopped halfway. You're going to regret this, he shouted. I did not answer. I simply closed the door and locked it. I turned off the front lights. I walked to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands were not shaking. My heart was beating calmly. Outside, I heard the SUV's engine drive away. I sat on the sofa. I looked at my shopping bags, pastries, books, candles, little things that made me happy. I smiled. For the first time in decades, I smiled without forcing it, without pretending, without expecting anything in return. Julian was gone. And I was okay. More than okay. I was free. That night I slept soundly, without nightmares, without being startled, without that constant weight on my chest that had accompanied me for years. I woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning with the sun streaming through the window. I stayed in bed for a few more minutes, listening to the silence of the house. Before, that silence scared me. It reminded me of my loneliness. Now it was different. It was peace. I got up feeling rested. I made coffee. I had breakfast in the garden. Toast with jam, fresh fruit. The morning air was cool and pleasant. I called Grace. My friend answered on the third ring. Clara, good morning. How are you? Her voice sounded cheerful. Good, I replied. And it was true. Do you have time for a coffee? I need to tell you something. Grace laughed. I always have time for you. Where should we meet? Remember that coffee shop near the park? The one with the delicious cakes. I'll be there in an hour. I hung up, smiling. It had been so long since I had felt like this. Light, free of burdens. I got ready carefully. I put on a loose, sand-colored dress. I let my hair down, a little makeup, simple earrings. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back at me looked different. Not younger, but more alive. I drove to the coffee shop. Grace was already there, sitting at a table by the window. She saw me arrive and smiled broadly. We hugged. You look radiant, she said. What happened? We sat down. We ordered coffee and cake. And then I told her everything. I told her about the party, about the humiliation, about ignoring Julian's calls, about changing the will, about the house on the coast I was buying. Grace listened in silence. Her eyes filled with tears when I described what Julian had said to me in front of everyone. That boy has no idea what he's lost, she said finally. Clara, you did the right thing. You spent years giving him everything and getting nothing in return. That's not love. That's abuse. Her words hit me hard. Abuse. I had never seen it that way. But she was right. I feel strange, I admitted. On one hand, I feel free. On the other, I feel guilty, as if I've abandoned my son. Grace took my hand across the table. Clara, listen to me carefully. You didn't abandon anyone. He abandoned you years ago, emotionally. He turned you into his personal bank, into his public embarrassment. You simply stopped allowing it. That's not abandonment. That's self-respect. I wiped away a tear I did not know had fallen. When did I become so foolish? You weren't foolish, Grace said firmly. You were a mother, and mothers sometimes love so much that we forget to love ourselves. We finished our coffee talking about the house on the coast. Grace was excited. You have to invite me when you move. We'll spend whole weekends. We'll walk on the beach. We'll cook. We'll read. It will be beautiful. The idea filled me with warmth. Of course I'll invite you. You're my only true friend. Grace smiled. And you're mine. Clara, this is your new beginning. Enjoy it. You deserve every second of happiness. We said goodbye with a long hug. I drove home feeling strengthened. Grace was right. This was my new beginning. The next 2 days were quiet. Julian did not call again. He did not show up at my door again. It was as if he had finally understood that there was nothing more to get from me. Or maybe he was planning something. I did not care. I was focused on my future. Sarah, the real estate agent, called on the 3rd day. Clara, everything is ready. Can you come sign tomorrow? I'll be there, I replied without hesitation. That night I packed a few things. Clothes, books, old photographs I wanted to keep. I left the photos of Julian in a drawer. I did not throw them away. But I would not take them with me either. The next morning, I drove to the coastal town. The day was perfect. Clear sky, gentle breeze. I arrived at Sarah's office at 10 o'clock sharp. I signed all the documents. I transferred the money. $180,000. Almost half of what was left of my savings. But I did not feel fear. I felt excitement. Congratulations, Clara, Sarah said, handing me the keys. The house is yours. I took the keys with trembling hands, not from nerves, from pure happiness. I drove to my new house. Our new house. Mine and no one else's. I opened the door. I walked in slowly. I went through each room, touching the walls, looking out the windows, imagining how I would decorate each space. I went out to the back porch. The sea was shining under the sunday. The waves were breaking, constant and calm. I sat on the wooden steps. I closed my eyes. I listened to the sound of the water, of the seagulls, of the wind. For the first time in years, I did not think about Julian. I did not think about the past. I only thought about this moment, about this peace. I returned to the city that afternoon. I had to organize the move, decide what to take and what to leave. When I arrived at my house, I found an envelope under the door. I picked it up. It was a letter from Julian. I recognized his handwriting on the envelope. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to open it, the part that still held a tiny hope that maybe he was truly sorry. But the other part, the new, strong part, knew the truth. This letter was not love. It was manipulation. It was a last attempt to regain control. I went into the house. I left the unopened envelope on the kitchen table. I made tea. I sat in front of the letter. I studied it as if it were a strange object. My name written in that handwriting I knew so well. The handwriting I had seen on school assignments, on birthday cards I no longer received, on legal documents he signed as my son. But this letter did not belong to me. It belonged to a version of me that no longer existed. To the Clara who begged for love, to the Clara who forgave everything. That woman was gone. I took the unopened letter. I walked to my room. I opened the drawer where I kept old things. Unimportant papers, old receipts, photographs. I never put in frames. I put the letter in there. I closed the drawer. If I ever felt curious, it would be there. But for now, I did not need to read it. I did not need his words. I did not need his excuses. I already knew everything I needed to know. I spent the next few days organizing my move. I hired a small company. I sold several pieces of furniture. The large dining table where Julian no longer ate. The living room sofa where he no longer Saturday. The bed from his old room that I had kept for years, hoping that one day he would come to visit with his children. Children he never had. Visits that never came. All of that was gone. I kept only the essentials. What I really needed to start over. One afternoon my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Clara. It was a woman's voice. Elegant. Cold. I recognized it immediately. Victoria. What do you want? I asked bluntly. There was a pause. I need to talk to you about Julian. I have nothing to talk about with him. Wait. Don't hang up. This is important. Her voice had an urgent tone I had never heard before. "You have 1 minute," I said. "Julian is in trouble. Serious financial trouble. He invested in a business that turned out to be a fraud. He lost a lot of money, money that wasn't his. And what does that have to do with me?" My voice was ice. "He needs help. He needs money to fix this before it becomes a legal problem." I laughed without humor. "Ah, now I understand. That's why the calls. That's why the letter. It wasn't regret. It was need." Victoria sighed. "Clara, I know what he did to you was wrong. I was there too. I saw everything. But he's your son. You can't let him fall like this." "I can't?" I asked. "Watch me. Please, Clara, I'm asking you as what, Victoria? As a daughter-in-law? You never treated me like a mother-in-law. You treated me like trash from day one. As if I were a mistake in Julian's life that had to be tolerated." Victoria was silent. Then she spoke with a harder voice. "If you don't help him, he'll lose everything. His reputation, his job. Everything I worked for, I corrected her. I paid for his education. I built his future. He just had to take advantage of it. And instead of being grateful, he decided to humiliate me publicly. He decided to use me as a joke, as a mockery. Well, now let him learn to solve his own problems." "You're his mother," Victoria said with desperation. "Mothers are supposed to forgive everything." "Mothers are also human," I replied. "And this mother has forgiven enough, has given enough, has suffered enough. Are you going to regret this when he really needs something and you're not there?" Victoria threatened. "Maybe," I said calmly. "But that will be my regret. Not yours, not his, mine, and I will be able to live with it, because at least I'll know I didn't let them keep using me." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were trembling slightly, but not from fear, from anger that had been contained for too long, from newfound power, from a freedom I was just beginning to taste. I poured myself a glass of water. I sat in the kitchen. I took a deep breath. Victoria had called. Julian was in trouble, and I had not given in. I had not run to rescue him. I had not sacrificed my peace for his mistakes. For the first time in 35 years, I had chosen my well-being over my son's, and it hurt. Of course, it hurt. But it also felt right. It felt like closing a circle that should have been closed a long time ago. That night, I packed the last boxes. My entire life fit into 20 boxes. It seemed like a little, but it was enough. The moving company would arrive the next day. In 2 days, I would be living in my house on the coast, far from this city, far from the memories, far from Julian and his world of appearances and coldness. I went to bed early. Tomorrow would be a long day, but it would also be the first day of the rest of my life. And that life would be mine. Only mine. The moving men arrived at 8 o'clock in the morning. There were 3 of them. Efficient workers who loaded my 20 boxes in less than 2 hours. They looked around the house with curiosity, probably wondering why someone would leave a large house for a smaller one. I did not give them any explanations. I owed them none. I supervised as they loaded the furniture I had decided to take. My bed. The single armchair I liked. The small kitchen table. The floor lamp I had bought 20 years ago. Simple things. My things. When they were finished, I locked the front door of the house. I stood on the porch, looking inside one last time. This house had been my home for 15 years. I had raised Julian here since he was a teenager. I had cried here when he got married and left. I had waited here for his visits that never came. But I had also sewn thousands of garments here. I had built my business here. I had found my strength here. This house held pain, but also pride. I thanked it in silence. Then I turned and walked to my car without looking back. The drive to the coast took an hour. I drove slowly, unhurried, enjoying the scenery, the mountains, the trees, the infinite sky. The coastal highway appeared, and with it, the smell of the sea. I rolled down the window completely. I let the wind mess up my hair. I did not care. I felt alive. I arrived in town at 11. The moving truck was already parked in front of my house. The men were waiting, sitting on the curb eating sandwiches. I apologized for the delay. They smiled. No problem, ma'am. We took a break. I opened the door to the house. They came in and started unloading. I showed them where to put everything. The bed in the master bedroom, which faced the backyard. The armchair in the living room, in front of the large window. The table in the small dining area. The boxes piled in the second room, which I would use as storage and a studio. In an hour, everything was inside. I paid them. I gave them a generous tip. They left, thanking me. And then I was alone. In my new house, in my new life. The silence was different here. It was not the heavy silence of loneliness. It was the quiet silence of peace. I walked barefoot through the house. I felt the wood floor under my feet. Cool, smooth. I opened all the windows. The sea breeze came in, filling every corner. I stood on the back porch. The sea was there, constant, eternal, indifferent to my problems. And that comforted me. The world kept spinning. The waves kept breaking. I kept breathing, and that was enough. I unpacked slowly, without rushing. First, the clothes. I filled the small closet with my dresses, my blouses, my pants, everything neat. Then the kitchen. Plates, glasses, pots, silverware. I put everything in its place. There was something therapeutic about organizing, about creating order where there had only been closed boxes. By mid-afternoon, the house was starting to look lived in, to feel like home. I made tea. I sat in my new armchair in front of the window. I looked at the sea in the distance. I smiled. I was home. The doorbell rang. It startled me. No one knew I was here. No one except Sarah and Grace. I approached the door cautiously. I looked through the side window. It was an older man, white hair, a green work shirt. He was holding a pot of flowers. I opened the door. Yes? The man smiled kindly. Hello, neighbor. I'm Arthur. I live in the house next door. I saw you were moving in today. I wanted to welcome you. He held out the flower pot. Yellow roses. Beautiful. Oh, how thoughtful. Thank you. I took the pot. I don't want to bother you. I just wanted to introduce myself. If you need anything at all, I'm right next door. His voice was warm. Sincere. That's very kind of you, Arthur. Well, I'll let you get some rest. Welcome to the neighborhood. He left with a smile. I closed the door. I looked at the roses. It had been years since someone had given me flowers without expecting anything in return, without ulterior motives. Just because. I placed the pot on the dining table. The roses brightened up the space. That night, I had something simple for dinner. Canned soup and bread. I did not have the energy to cook. I washed my plate. I straightened the kitchen. I changed into my pajamas. I lay down in my new bed. The sheets smelled like lavender. I had bought new sheets especially for this new beginning. I got comfortable. I closed my eyes. I heard the distant sound of the waves, and I slept deeply. I woke to the sound of seagulls. It took me a few seconds to remember where I was. Then I smiled. I was in my house, at the beach, far from everything. I got up and opened the curtains. The sun was just beginning to rise. The sky was painted orange and pink. The sea was glittering peacefully. I put on a robe and went out barefoot onto the porch. The cool air hit my face. I took a deep breath. It smelled of salt, of freedom, of a new beginning. I stood there for several minutes, just being. Just existing without thinking about anything or anyone. I made coffee. I drank it on the porch while watching the sunrise completely. The colors changed every minute. It was a spectacle I had seen in photographs but never in person. It was worth every penny I had paid for this house. I had fruit and toast for breakfast, simple and perfect. Afterwards, I showered and dressed in comfortable clothes, sand-colored linen pants, and a loose white blouse. I decided to explore the town. I needed to get to know my new home. I walked through the quiet streets. It was barely 9 o'clock in the morning. Some shops were opening their doors. Others still had their curtains drawn. I greeted a woman who was sweeping the entrance to her bakery. She returned the greeting with a smile. You're new around here. Yes, I just moved in. Welcome. I'm Christina. If you need fresh bread, we're here every day. Thank you, Christina. I'll be back soon. I continued walking, feeling good. The people here were friendly, unpretentious. I found a small market. I went in. I needed to do some shopping. Vegetables, fruit, chicken, rice, eggs, milk, the basics. As I was filling my basket, a woman approached. She was probably in her 70s. Completely white hair tied up in a bun. "Excuse me, are you Clara?" I was surprised. "Yes, do we know each other?" She laughed. "No, but Arthur told me a new neighbor had arrived. This is a small town. News travels fast." She extended her hand. "I'm Eleanor. I live 3 houses down from Arthur." I shook her hand. "A pleasure to meet you. If you need recommendations on where to shop or anything, just let me know. The women in this town look out for each other." Her words moved me. "Thank you, Eleanor. I'll keep that in mind." I paid for my groceries and went home. I put everything away. I organized the refrigerator. I cleaned a little, even though the house was already clean. I needed to keep my hands busy, my mind calm. At noon, I made lunch. Salad with chicken. I ate on the porch, watching the sea. It was strange to be so calm. For years, I had lived in a state of constant anxiety, waiting for calls that never came, preparing meals that no one ate, holding on to stories that no one wanted to hear. Now I was not waiting for anything. And in that lack of expectation, I found peace. In the afternoon, I decided to walk on the beach. I put on sandals and went down the path that led straight to the sand. It was a small beach, quiet. There were few people, a young couple, a man with his dog, a family with children. No one paid me any attention. I liked that. I walked along the shore. The cold water touched my feet. The sand sank under my weight. I picked up a seashell. It was perfect, cream-colored with pink lines. I put it in my pocket. A small, worthless, but beautiful treasure. I walked for an hour. Aimlessly, unhurriedly, just feeling. When I got back home, I was tired but satisfied. I made tea. I sat in my armchair with one of the books I had bought. I read for 2 hours, lost in a story that was not mine, in problems that were not mine. It was liberating. When it got dark, I turned on the lights. I prepared a light dinner, soup and salad. I ate, looking out the window as the lights of the town turned on one by one. After dinner, my phone rang. It was Grace. "Clara, how is everything?" Her voice sounded cheerful. "Good. Very good, actually. Tell me everything. How's the house? Are you settled in?" I told her everything. The move, the town, Arthur, Eleanor, the beach. Grace listened, making excited comments. "You sound different," she said after a while. "Different how?" "Calm, light, as if a weight has been lifted from your shoulders." "That's exactly how I feel," I admitted. "I'm so happy for you, Clara. You deserve this peace. After everything you've been through." We talked for another half hour. Before hanging up, Grace said, "By the way, I ran into a cousin of yours yesterday, Raquel. She asked about you. I told her you had moved to the coast, but I didn't give her the address. I hope that's okay." I tensed slightly. Raquel was my late husband's cousin. She had always been a gossip, always meddling where she was not wanted. "That's fine. Thank you for not giving her my address. I figured you'd want your privacy." "I do." We said goodbye. I hung up with a slight sense of unease. Raquel would surely tell Julian that I had moved, that I had disappeared without telling anyone in the family, but it did not matter. I no longer had to give explanations to anyone. That night, before going to sleep, I checked my phone. I had a message from an unknown number. I opened it. It was Julian. "Mom, I know you're angry, but disappearing like this isn't fair. The family is worried. I need to know you're okay. Please call me." I read the message 3 times. I analyzed every word. The family is worried. Not I'm worried. The family. As if he were the spokesperson for everyone. As if his concern were genuine, and not just a need to control me. Please call me. Not forgive me. Not I miss you. Just call me. I deleted the message. I blocked the number. No more. I would not let him find me, manipulate me, drag me back into that cycle of pain. I turned off the phone. I left it on the nightstand. I lay down, looking at the ceiling. The house was silent. Only the distant sound of the sea could be heard. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. That mother's guilt that never completely goes away. But then I remembered. I remembered the humiliation, the laughter, the years of contempt, and the guilt dissolved. I turned over and got comfortable. Tomorrow would be another day. A day without Julian, without expectations, without pain. Just me and my new life. And that was more than enough. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of a simple and beautiful routine. I woke up with the Sunday I made coffee. I walked on the beach every morning. I bought fresh bread from Christina's bakery. I read on the porch. I cooked meals that I liked without worrying about anyone else. In the afternoons, I sometimes visited Eleanor. I would have tea in her garden while she told me stories about the town. Other times, Arthur would show up with vegetables from his garden. "I have too many tomatoes," he would say. "I don't want them to go bad." I would accept them gratefully. I would cook sauce. I would share it with him in containers that he returned clean. One morning, while walking on the beach, I saw a sign in the window of a small shop. Sewing instructor wanted. Free classes for community youth. I stopped. I read the sign several times. It had been years since I had sewn, but the hands never forget. I wrote down the phone number. That afternoon I called. A young woman answered. Esperanza Community Center. Good morning. Hello. I'm calling about the ad for the sewing instructor. Oh, wonderful. Do you have experience? I owned a textile factory for 20 years. There was a surprised pause. Then you have a lot of experience. Can you come in tomorrow to meet us? Of course. What time? 10 o'clock is fine. Perfect. I'll be there. The next day, I got ready carefully. Black pants and a mustard-colored blouse. I put my hair up. I drove to the community center. It was a simple building painted white and green. Inside, it smelled of coffee and fresh paint. A woman in her 30s greeted me. Clara? Yes, that's me. We shook hands. I'm Raquel, the coordinator. Thanks for coming. She showed me the place. There was a room with long tables, another with computers, a community kitchen, and a small room with 3 old sewing machines. This would be it, Raquel said. The machines work, but they need maintenance. We have 6 girls enrolled, between 15 and 18 years old. They come from low-income families. We want to teach them a trade. I looked at the machines. I touched one fondly. It was like the first one I ever had. Old but noble. When would the classes start? Whenever you can. There's no rush. I thought about my empty house. My afternoons with nothing to do. All that knowledge stored in my head that would die with me if I did not share it. I can start next week, twice a week. 2 hours each class. Raquel smiled broadly. That would be perfect. We pay. No, I interrupted. I don't want payment. I want to do it because I enjoy it. Because I know what it's like to need an opportunity and not have one. Raquel looked at me with moist eyes. Thank you, Clara. You don't know how much this means to these girls. I left the center feeling useful for the first time in months. I had a purpose now. Something to do that had nothing to do with Julian, with the past, with the pain. I stopped by a fabric store. I bought several yards of different colors and textures. Also thread, needles, new scissors. Everything needed to teach. I spent $200, but I did not care. It was an investment in something that made me happy. I arrived home with the bags full. I left them in the second room, my future teaching workshop. That night, Grace called me. I told her about the classes. She was thrilled. Clara, that's wonderful. You're going to change the lives of those girls, just like you changed your own. She was right. I was changing my life, day by day, choice by choice. I was no longer the woman who begged for love. I was the woman who gave love to herself and shared that love with others who deserved it. We talked for a long time. Before hanging up, Grace said, "By the way, Julian looked for me. My heart sped up. What did he want? Your address. I told him I didn't have it. He got angry. Said you were his mother, and he had a right to know where you were. I told him rights are earned with respect. He hung up furiously. I smiled sadly. Thank you for not telling him anything. I never would. Clara, he doesn't deserve to find you. Not until he understands what he's lost. We hung up. I sat on the sofa, thinking. Julian was looking for me. But not out of love. He still needed something from me. Money, probably. It was always money. I wondered if he would ever understand. If he would ever look back and see everything I gave him. Everything I sacrificed. And if that day came, if it would be too late, probably, and he would have to live with that. Just as I lived with my decision to let him go, the following week, I started the classes. The 6 girls arrived on time. Shy, curious, I introduced myself. I'm Clara. I'm going to teach you how to sew. It's not easy, but it's worth it. You can create beautiful things with your hands. You can earn a dignified living. You can be independent. I showed them the basics, how to thread the needle, how to sew a straight line, how to use the machines carefully. They listened with absolute attention. They asked intelligent questions. 2 hours flew by. At the end, one of them, Sarah, approached me. Thank you, Miss Clara. No one has ever taught us anything like this before. Her words touched my soul. The following weeks turned into months. The classes became my favorite reason to leave the house. Seeing the girls' progress, their excitement when they sewed their first perfect seam, their pride when they finished their first garment. One afternoon, Sarah showed me a dress she had made. Simple but well constructed. It's for my mom, she said. It's her birthday. I hugged her. It's beautiful. Your mom is going to cry with happiness. Sarah smiled. Like you do when you teach us. I can tell you love it. She was right. I loved it. It fulfilled me. It gave me purpose. One afternoon, as I was leaving the center, I found Arthur waiting in his truck. Hello, neighbor. I saw you had class today. Want me to give you a ride? Oh, I brought my car. I know. But I thought maybe you'd like to get some coffee before heading back. I know a place with a sea view. I hesitated for a moment. Then I smiled. Why not? I got into his truck. We went to a small coffee shop on a cliff. The view was spectacular. We ordered coffee and cake. We talked about everything. About his life. About mine. About his children who lived in another city. About his wife who had passed away 5 years ago. I miss her every day, he said. But life goes on, and you have to live it. I nodded. I understood perfectly. We returned to town at sunset. Arthur dropped me off at my house. Thanks for the coffee, I said. Thank you for the company, he replied. Clara, if you ever want to go out again, just let me know. It doesn't have to be anything romantic. Just 2 people enjoying life. I smiled. I like that idea. I went into my house feeling light. It was not love. It was not romance. It was friendship. Simple companionship. And that was enough. More than enough. That night, before sleeping, I looked out the window. The stars were shining. The sea sounded constant. I had rebuilt my life. Stone by stone. Choice by choice. I no longer hoped for Julian to change. I no longer hoped for his love. I had found something better. I had found myself. 6 months had passed since I moved to the coast. 6 months of peace I did not know was possible to feel. My life had found a perfect rhythm. I woke up early. I walked on the beach. I taught sewing twice a week. I visited Eleanor on Thursdays for tea. On Saturdays, Arthur and I explored nearby towns. No pressure, no expectations, just genuine friendship. My house had filled with little details that made it mine. Plants on the porch, books stacked next to the armchair, photographs of sunsets that I had taken myself. A simple but profoundly mine life. One November afternoon, I was watering the plants when I heard a car stop in front of my house. I looked over the hedge. It was a black SUV. My heart stopped. I recognized that car immediately. Julian got out of the driver's side. Victoria from the passengers. I watched them walk to my door. They rang the doorbell. Once, twice, 3 times. I remained motionless in the backyard. They had not seen me. "Mom, I know you're here," Julian shouted. "Your car is in the driveway. Please open up." His voice sounded tired, defeated. But I no longer responded to that voice. Victoria spoke then. "Clara, we just want to talk. 5 minutes." They waited. They rang again. 10 minutes passed. Finally, I heard their steps moving away, but they did not start the car. They stayed outside, waiting, betting that I would eventually come out. I sat on the back porch where they could not see me. I picked up my book. I pretended to read, though the words made no sense. Half an hour later, I heard voices. It was Arthur. "Can I help you with something?" "We're looking for the lady who lives here," Julian replied. "Are you family?" "I'm her son." There was a pause. "I understand. But if she doesn't open the door, it's because she doesn't want visitors. This is a quiet town. We respect people's privacy." "She's my mother," Julian insisted arrogantly. "I have a right to see her." "Rights are built with respect, young man," Arthur said in a firm voice. "I suggest you leave. If she wants to contact you, she will when she's ready." I heard protests, arguments, then finally, the engine starting, the car driving away. I took a deep breath. Arthur had been there for me, protecting my peace. 10 minutes later, he knocked gently on my back door. I opened it. "They're gone," he said. "Thank you, Arthur." He looked at me with concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Better than fine." He nodded. He did not ask any more questions. That is what I appreciated most about him. He respected my silences. That night, I could not sleep. Knowing that Julian had found me was unsettling. It had taken me so much to build this peace. I could not let him destroy it. The next morning, I found an envelope under my door. I recognized it immediately. Julian's handwriting. This time, I opened it. I needed to know what he wanted. The letter was long. It spoke of regret, of mistakes, of how much he needed me. But between the lines, I read the truth. It spoke of financial problems, of debts, of needing a loan. There it was, the real reason for his visit. It was not love, it was money, as always. I read the entire letter. Then I folded it carefully. I went to the kitchen. I turned on one of the stove burners. I held the letter over the flame. I watched as the paper was consumed, as the words disappeared, turned to ash. I did not feel pain. I did not feel guilt. I only felt closure. I threw the ashes in the trash can. I washed my hands. I made coffee. I had a peaceful breakfast watching the sunrise. Julian had come, Julian had gone, and I was still here, standing, at peace. The following days, I returned to my routine. The sewing classes filled me with joy. Sarah and the other girls had progressed so much. They were now sewing complete blouses, skirts. Some were even selling their creations at the local market. It filled me with pride to see them grow. One afternoon, Sarah arrived excited. "Miss Clara, I sold 3 blouses. I earned enough to help my mom with the household expenses." I hugged her tightly. "I'm so proud of you." She hugged me back. "You changed our lives." All of ours. Her words touched me deeply. This was what it meant to be a real mother. Not giving out of obligation, giving out of love, and receiving genuine gratitude. One December evening, Grace came to visit. She spent the weekend at my house. We walked on the beach. We cooked together. We laughed like teenagers. I showed her my classes. She met the girls. "Eleanor, Arthur, you've built a beautiful life here," she said on the last night as we drank wine on the porch. "A life you deserve." We toasted under the stars. "Have you heard anything from Julian?" she asked carefully. "He came a few weeks ago. I didn't see him. He left me a letter asking for money. I burned it." Grace nodded. "And how do you feel about that?" "Free," I answered without hesitation. "Completely free." Christmas arrived. My first Christmas alone in 35 years. But I did not feel alone. Eleanor invited me to have dinner with her family. Arthur did too. I accepted both invitations. Early dinner with Eleanor, dessert with Arthur. Both houses were filled with warmth, with laughter, with genuine love. They treated me like family, not because they had to, because they wanted to. I returned to my house that night with a full heart. I sat on my porch, looking at the dark sea. The lights of the town twinkled in the distance. I thought about Julian. I wondered what he was doing. If he thought of me. Probably not, and that was okay. Because I did not think much about him either. He no longer occupied every thought. He no longer hurt constantly. He was just a distant memory, like an old scar that no longer aches. On New Year's Eve, I walked alone on the beach at midnight. I heard fireworks in the distance. The sea shimmered under the full moon. I took off my sandals. I put my feet in the cold water. I closed my eyes. I made a wish. I did not ask for Julian to change. I did not ask for reconciliation. I asked to continue having the strength to choose myself, to protect my peace, to live this life that had cost me so much to build. I opened my eyes. A large wave soaked my pants. I laughed. I laughed alone on the beach like a happy fool. Because that's what I was. I was happy, genuinely happy. I went back home. I changed my clothes. I made tea. I sat in my armchair with a blanket. I took out my journal. I had started writing a few months ago. Thoughts, reflections, gratitudes. I wrote about this year, about everything I had lost and everything I had gained. I ended with a single sentence. I didn't need him to change. I needed to change, and I did. I closed the journal. I put it in the drawer. I lay down, feeling something I had not felt in decades. I was whole, not because someone completed me, but because I had finally found myself. The next morning, I woke up early. I made coffee. I went out to the porch. The sun was beginning to rise. The sky was painted with impossible colors. The sea sang its eternal song. I drank my coffee slowly, savoring every sip, savoring every second of this piece. Somewhere in the city, Julian was going on with his life, with his problems, with his decisions, and I was here, in my house by the sea, with my plants, my books, my students, my friends, my simple but profoundly mine life. I did not need revenge. I already had something much better. I had peace. I had dignity. I had self-love. And that, no one could ever take from me again. I smiled, looking at the horizon. This was my happy ending, not the one I had imagined, but the one I deserved. And it was perfect.